have just played for you La Cloche Sonne, The Bell Tolls by Franz Liszt. As you heard, this is a very pared down piece, very intimate. It's based on an old French folk tune. And when we think normally of Franz Liszt, the consummate virtuoso, we think of enormously difficult repertoire. And that's usually the case. But he did write a handful of pieces that are good for the early intermediate student. And I was absolutely thrilled when I found this piece. Liszt uses the utmost simplicity, minimum of means, and achieves a maximum of expression, deeply profound. So how does he do it? Let's just see. Now I said it's the bell tolls. He's going to start with a two-measure introduction of just the bells, C and G. Now, what key is this in? We don't know. With just the 1 and the 5, it could be C major, or with the E flat, C minor. And it isn't until the left hand comes in measure 3 that we get the real key of C minor. Let's take a look now at the folk tune. Starting, now we know, in C minor, and the triad. This is in 3/4 time. 1 and 2 and 3 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now I'm counting out loud here because the beats are coming a little bit off of how the phrases begin. It doesn't start on the downbeat. Everything is shifted a little bit, and that's going to change how you play it. So immediately, when I hear this, it's a call to me. The bells in the right hand on this 5th, blocked 5th of C and G, and the left hand exactly an octave lower with the same 5th. We have a beautiful balance already and a sense of groundedness in the body with the outer fingers making the 5ths. And listen to the purity of the 5th. 1, 2, 3. See, when we start the piece, you don't know what beat it is. You can't tell that it's starting on the and of 1. Listen to this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 and. You know that happens 5 times? So in order to control this, I'm starting right now technically here, I like to place the tips of the fingers, the 5 and the 1, and stroke the keys. You need to get your anchoring so the tips have perfect contact with the keys. And then in order to control this so they're all even bells, imagine 2 bells you're striking, 1 for the right and 1 for the left. That's the sound we want. Perfectly controlled and even and together. That's very difficult to do. Let's try it as written. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now here we break out of the 5th into the octave of B flat. And see a monastery, I can hear chanting. You know, Liszt became an abbey in his later years. He was always drawn to the church, and even in his youth he wanted to be a priest. And he never lost that calling and love of God, and I think that's in this piece. Reaching up the fifth. Now he goes to the fourth scale degree, the F. It's asking a question, isn't it? Here's the third phrase. To the D, the second scale degree, and ending with 3/8 notes the first time a new rhythm, F, E flat, D, E flat. Then he repeats the whole phrase again. All 4 of those little tiny melodic fragments repeat, except there's a twist at the end. Let's try now going on with the repetition and see if you can tell the difference when we get to the end. And I will add the right hand. This is the repetition. Where is he going? He brought us to the dominant. With the last time, F, E flat, D, G. And the right hand repeating the dominant. The bell just by itself, the single G bell at the top. He's thinking, he's taking us. This is pensive. This is a journey already. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at now. This is a brand new engraving. I'm so thrilled to be able to show you this. I just finished making this. This is exactly the notes you'll find in public domain music, but not looking at all like this, because I re-engraved it on the 11-inch by 17-inch wide horizontal axis. And this allows me to get the long, uninterrupted phrase on one line. Here we go with our third system. I call these systems. There are 4 altogether in the piece. Now you notice that I have colors on this. This is marked up for the lesson. You get these colors in the chart package that you can get from my website, sallychristianmusic.com, as digital downloads. You'll simply take your PDFs and have them printed on beautiful 60-pound cardstock, and this is what it will look like. Completely clean and pure. You can see you're opening 4 melodic fragments. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the first ending. And then the repetition, I've lined these up so you can see the second time of the folk tune, melodic fragment 1, 2, 3, and 4, with the different ending and the trailing off of the single G bell. Now look what he has here. This is very, very interesting. These are the musical clues. And even as an early intermediate student, the clues are essentially important. The marking of the dashes of the accents here, the little phrases, the slight diminuendo, these fermatas, meaning to hold the note, a double fermata, that's huge, a slight retard here. And for your final and most beautiful part of the chart package, in my opinion, these color structural analyses that I make are the heart and soul of the piece. This is the bird's eye view, this is your map, this is your color coding, this shows the structure and really genius behind the pieces. So here I've color coded the theme 1 folk tune in the blue box. First time, second time, 2 measures of introduction This says it, introduction. And then our theme 2 I put in a golden yellow box because it is golden. It's absolutely splendid what Liszt is going to be taking us to next. Then a recitative in the pink. I made this up. The recitative doesn't exist in the music, but it sounds like that to me. Completely defining material going into the heart and soul of the piece at this point. And then a wrap up with the return of the folk tune one last time, altered down an octave. There are lots of things that we can study on this. One of them I'll say right now up front is the melody in the left hand for the first statement of the folk tune. With our secondary material, the parts reverse and the melody's in the right hand. And then back to the left hand melody here. So now let's take a look at the second section. But before we do, I want to say something about the scale degrees of C minor. The whole scale in natural minor we have 7 different scale degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then the C is the tonic again. Do you realize that Liszt has used 6 of the 7 of those scale degrees in the opening blue box section? There's only one missing. Do you know which one it is? I'm going to play it again and see if you can find the missing scale degree from the top. And what I'd like you to do is imagine that you're playing this now, and with each of the 4 melodic fragments, hear them as saying something a little bit different. Liszt actually, in the manuscript of this piece, which extraordinarily so was only published in 1958, 108 years after he wrote the piece. In 1850, it appears to the public. It's just an amazing thing. And when they found it in the Liszt Museum in Weimar, it was a single manuscript page, and on the back, Liszt had written out the words that go with this folk tune. And I have not been able to get access to those. If anybody has them, please let me know. I'd love to know what they are. But we don't have them for the lesson, so let's imagine what they might be. And with each different interval, think of what it is saying to you. What were the words? And what's the missing scale degree? For the second section, right here. Do you feel the meaning? Can you sense how this has completely changed with the appearance of the A flat? Right there. Everything's pulling down, reaching up to the G, falling, and rising to, again, another if I take, now this is going into 2/4 time, and the hands reverse. Now the melody is at the top, and the accompaniment, and in this case, the accompaniment is just as important as the melodic line of the folk tune. So we want to pay just as much attention to both parts. This enters now this entire yellow box region here becomes 4-part harmony. And I'd like you to take a close look at this, that we have, of course this is both treble clefs, we have the soprano part with the moving melodic line, the C half note, B flat half note, A flat half note, and G half note is the alto part. And it's complemented by the tenor that also has just a half note of A flat, G, F, and E flat. And then this beautiful fourth voice of the bass is another bell. A beautiful bell on the B flat pedal point. He's using the same B flat we had here that was functioning as a 7th scale degree in C minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, when we have it down here, oh, what a marvelous chord. That's polytonality. This is 1850. Could easily be 50 years later, 1900s. Taking this left hand alone, the tenor. What does that sound like? Well, to me it sounds like E flat major. Can't you hear that? He could have done that. And in that case, the B flat would have been the dominant, a new dominant. So we are being led to believe that we're in the relative major of E flat major here, but we're not really. Redistribution now, left hand in 2/4 time. I'm going to hold the tenor half note and strike the same note. I have to show you this now, this double note here. The half note with the upward stem is the tenor, and the 8th note with the downward stem is the bass, and they both play the same pitch on the same downbeat, but they are two different voices. So if you can think that way, divide your brain into two different parts, and it helps to redistribute when you're learning the piece, to put it in the body. My right hand now is my tenor, my left hand is my bass, and this is what I have. The two parts, soprano and alto. That has that same 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and it floats. 5th, 4th, 4th, and octave. And there's our G octave. The same G octave that he ended the first blue box with. The G here in the left hand and the G in the right. These are the very same two Gs that he ends here at the end of the yellow box. You see the balance and the logic as he's weaving one uninterrupted journey here, knowing very well when he ends the blue box. And by the way, starting at measure 10 with that last blue box, I wanted to point out that the octave B flats change. The first time And this is worth going backwards to get this point. I did not want to miss this point. When learning the piece, notice here that in measure 6, the right hand has 1 and 2 and 3 and with the repetition, measure 10, it becomes syncopated. With these counts, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, and you have to really feel those pulling, those syncopations. If I play starting the upbeat to measure 13 now, as everything is blocked chords, you'll even hear more the harmonic fragrance of this section. So melody and all the other 3 parts as a blocked chord. And let's see what this sounds like. These are all suggestions for how to practice this piece and acquaint yourself with the depth that he's put in it. Even though it sounds simple, there's a lot to this piece that lifts you. Now notice I'm breathing. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Crescendo. So when you go to breathe this and sing it, feel the second beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Repetition breath. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. It's so tender. It's just the sweetest melody. It's like a breeze. It's a perfume. It's a memory. It's wistful. I remember those days. I'm thinking this right now on the spot. Something that was so poignant and beautiful. Notice also that the alto and the tenor make this beautiful duet in descending parallel thirds. Can you hear that when you play it? They have to be held. And where do they go? Fourth at the end. Now that we know all of the different elements going on in here, I'm going to play it as written. Listen for the punctuation of the B flat pedal point on the end of 1. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 7 times that B flat bell strikes, and only on the 8th measure does it move to the B natural. Feel that, expect it, project it. Listen for the falling phrases in the melodic line. And the dotted rhythm, ya, da, dee, da, da, is reminiscent of the opening, da, dee, da, da, which is also a dotted 8th note. Da, dee, da, da. He's lifting and suspending. And you really feel inside internally light. And if you were singing, you would feel that. Same with the second theme. And 1. And repetition. Is an inversion of a G major triad. And that could be a cadence. And it actually is what's going to happen. This will lead to the final closing chord. But how does it get there? single note now becomes the feelings getting crystallized and clarified as the narrative of the recitative in an opera is. It gives further definition to the plot of what's really going on. It recites the innermost feelings that may be hidden, and it becomes free form rhythmically. That's why I called it a recitative. And listen to this. There is an amazing clue in here. Everything's coming down, and there is clearly back to C minor. What a beautiful way to get us back home. Did you know this theme 2 melody of measure 13, G, F, A flat, G, E flat, G, F, D, is transformed in the recitative? Same notes, G, except now in 16th notes. F, A flat, G, E flat, G, F, and here's the clincher, not D, but D flat. That's another one of those completely unexpected shifts in the psyche. That happens to be a first inversion of a D flat chord. I labeled that as a Neapolitan sixth, which it is. And don't be scared by that. All it means is on your opening key of C minor, you take your second scale degree, which is D, lower it a half step to the D flat, and build a major triad. D flat major. That's a Neapolitan chord. And they're frequently in the form of first inversion, and they're called Neapolitan sixths, and that's what he's used. A little bit of theory for you here. But the overriding, most important thing is, what is the emotional content here? What is he saying, and where is he taking us? The left hand also has the same third that we ended the yellow box with, and 2 more thirds. This isn't going anywhere. This is wandering. This is searching. And here it is now. Expressivo. Dark, almost like a heart stab. Defining harmony with this. And you know it's coming. Now what I did in the color structural analysis is to put in orange lines the places here at the end where there were surprise intervals. I call these defining harmonies, defining moments in the piece that determine the points of psychological departure or psychological arrival. When we shape a phrase, we have to know where we're going or where we're coming from. This is where he's going, the whole entire 8 measures here. And these intervals. Did I mention the intervals in the left hand? I don't know if I did, but those play sevenths in the yellow box, 6th, 5th, 4th. I know I played this because we said it sounds like E flat major, but it becomes all the more powerful when it goes to here. So you know in advance when you start this, it's all leading to this. And then this huge Neapolitan 6th, and the final F sharp raised 4th. That has got to be based on some of the gypsy folk melodies and harmonies that Liszt grew up with. Liszt was born in a town called Riding. It was at the time in Hungary. It's now part of Austria. Everything changed when Liszt was born in 1811. The country borders, excuse me, and names of the countries were completely different than they were 100 years later and what they are today. But when he was a boy, it was Hungary. And he did not speak Hungarian. He spoke German, and then he moved to Paris in his adolescence and spoke fluent French and fluent Italian. And being a concert pianist, he was traveling all over Europe all the time for 20 years, all the way up until he left the concert stage at the age of 39 to devote himself primarily to composing and conducting and teaching. So he was versed, he was a worldly person and comfortable in all these countries and languages. And I want to say also, because when you know more about the person, you can put that into the piece by relating to that. He was a generous person. He gave freely of his time. He had so many students. In fact, he is my great-great-great-grand teacher, Liszt, my teacher Philip Lorenz, who studied with Claudia Orau, who studied with Martin Krause, who studied with Franz Liszt, who studied with Czerny, who studied with Beethoven. It's an amazing thing how many people Liszt taught, and he taught free of charge. He just wanted to pass on the knowledge and shaped profoundly the whole direction of romantic music and certainly classical piano music with everything that he wrote and everybody that he taught and his values of love and service. Just an extraordinary human being. He invented the tone poem. His sonata that he wrote 3 years after this piece was written, extraordinary single movement piece. These things hadn't been done before. So he wrote this piece right after he had arrived in Weimar, and we don't know what prompted it, but I am so grateful that it exists in the literature. And for all of you teachers teaching your students who want something beautiful and enriching, and not too technically challenging, but deeply satisfying musically, please teach this piece. And please learn it. People that are studying the piano, there are a handful of pieces that I think stand out for the early intermediate student. The Bach Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier is one. Similar to this, economy of means, profound musical expressiveness. Another one is In Church by Tchaikovsky, which has its own series of long extended bells. So I hope this has been helpful for you and that you learn the piece and remember that your work with the piano is enriching you, expanding you, and making your journey so rich and meaningful. And it doesn't matter where you take it, it's where it takes you. Thank you. And play your La Cloche Sonne.